Okay, we're going to install the ultralight control horns that Kick-Ass is using on their aircrafts. There are holes provided for the control horn pegs to stick into. The forward peg often is covered by the tape line. So what I like to do is just take my my blade and open up that forward hole through the tape, so I can slide my control horn in. And I'll just line it up with the two holes there and slide it right in place. Now the control horns come with back plates, and you can use these back plates on 6mm foam. It's hard to get them on because it's a really tight fit, but it will go on. I don't feel that you need them. I've been using it on all the prototypes and it's worked real well to just go ahead and put some CA glue on the posts. Okay, we're going to take and put some glue on the little horns, on the posts rather, as well as the base of the horn, and then just slide that those posts directly into the holes. And then I just like to hold a little pressure on there, hit it with some kicker, and that holds like a champ. I've never had it come loose. One of the things you may want to do is, as you're putting these on, and before you put on the first one, is take some of your wire that we use to do the Z-bends and stick it up to the hole and wiggle it, because it's going to be really tight. And if you'll just kind of wiggle it through like that, you can make that hole exactly fit your Z-bend wire. Okay, now we need to make some Z-bend pieces for our control rod, since we've got all of our servos mounted now. And you can do it with just a pair of needle nose pliers. Do about an 1/8 inch bend and get it to a nice 90 degrees, and then take it again and do about an 1/8 inch bend, and you end up with a nice Z-bend. And just going to get it lined up. You see that? Nice Z-bend. And then you only need about 3/4 of an inch, and clip that off with your diagonal pliers, and you've got a nice Z-bend section here. One of the things we didn't show earlier was the 1/8 inch heat shrink that comes in your accessory kit, but we're going to use this heat shrink to put the Z-bends onto the control rods. So I'm going to cut a piece about 3/8 of an inch long. That's all you're going to need. And I'm going to slide it onto one of our control rods for the elevator or rudder. I'm going to take our little Z-bend piece. I'm just going to slide it in there with a little bit of wire sticking through on both sides. Take my heat gun, and I'll just shrink that heat shrink down. I'm not worried yet about the alignment of the rod, but now I can just go ahead and position it so it's centered on the rod, and I've got a little bit over an 1/8 of an inch between the Z-bend and the carbon. At this point, I'll go ahead and apply some CA glue, just a dot on each end, and a dot on this end. And what will happen is that CA glue will wick up into that heat shrink tubing and do a great job of holding that Z-bend in place. What we're going to do now is set up our control rod for the aileron. And first thing we need to do is lock our aileron into position. I like to use a straight pin and set the control surface where it's about a 1/16 of an inch high. And why do you set it high? I think it's magic. But every time you put one of these together, I don't know if it's the tape setting or the material setting, but the aileron will droop a little bit. So I always like to set this about an 1/8 of an inch high, so when it does its little droop, it's perfect. So we're going to take one of the aileron control rods that we've put a Z-bar on one end. We're going to go ahead and put it into the control horn. I can find that little bitty 1mm hole there. Okay, we've got that in place, and I'm going to see if it's about right, and it is perfect length just as we cut it. And what we did is we cut that piece of material that was provided for you in half to give us this perfect length, and that worked out great. And we can check the other side while we're at it also. With the surface on the aileron locked into a position 1/16 high and the servo arm exactly perpendicular to the fuse, I went ahead and put the heat shrink tubing on to the rod, the Z-bend into the control arm, and then slid the heat shrink tubing over the wire. Now this is a trick that I've used. I've made a little piece of paper with a slot in it, and it'll allow me to heat up that heat shrink without melting my fuselage. It's a nice little trick. So now we've got our heat shrink all nice and tight. I'm going to come in. You can leave the little guard there if you'd like, if you're afraid you're going to drop some glue. I'm just going to hit a drop of glue. Oops, I dropped a little bit. Put a little glue at the other side. I'll take some paper towel and dry up that little extra bit of glue there. And hit it with some CA. And we've got a completed aileron rod. We'll just do the same for the other side of the aileron and the rudder and elevator. Okay, to put the screw onto this control arm, what I like to do is put a little angled relief into this, and I'm just going to take my blade and cut it about a 45-degree angle and just relieve a little slot to so I can get at the screw. Okay, now that I've cut the slot for the screw, I like to put the screw on my screwdriver, turn the airplane upside down, and then just advance the screw into its position. And now I can tighten it up, and it just makes it for getting at the servo easier with the little relief slot there. Okay, we've gone ahead and placed the arm for the, this is for the elevator servo, and I'm going to take the control rod, place it in the back here into the control horn, and go ahead and bring that around. Okay, got a nice snug fit in there. We're going to check the distance. We want to leave about 3/16 of an inch between the end of the control rod and the servo arm. So hopefully you can get in here and see this. I'm just going to cut this 3/16 of an inch before the control arm. You can see it leaves that nice 3/16 cap there. Okay, we're going to put the control rod on for the rudder. What we've done first is we slipped the Z-bar into the aft control horn for the rudder, and then we slid on our rod guide. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to measure the appropriate length for the rudder. And what we want to do is give about 3/16 of an inch clearance here, and cut that off. That's the appropriate clearance. And we will slide a piece of heat shrink on, put our Z-bend in place just like we did on the ailerons. What we're going to do now is place the bulkhead onto the airplane. This is one place where I really think you need to consider using epoxy. I use a 15-minute epoxy by Hobby King. It's just a good time frame for a epoxy. It gives you a lot of work time, but you don't have to wait till tomorrow to fly it. This is something you can fly within a couple hours. I've gone ahead and put down my beads and mixed it up real good. So I'm just going to apply a small amount of epoxy to the surfaces here. You don't need to overdo it, because in this kit we've got this where it really lines up well. And just put my little bit on here, work it out. We've got some more supports we're going to come back in with and support this motor mount also. So we got our glue spread just enough to cover it. We're going to take our motor mount here. Now there's going to be some carbon around the edge of this motor mount because it's actually burned by the laser. You'll see a little carbon come off onto the foam, but it's something you can clean off easily. And it is a nice snug fit, so I'm going to have to go ahead and push this in here really well. We're going to see that it got a good fit all the way around. Got some glue oozing out there. We don't want too much oozing out because we're going to put our supports in there. See, I got some charcoal from the burn in here. I'm going to go ahead and get that cleaned out of here. Okay, got the bulkhead in place. While we're at it, I'll go ahead and show you how I put in one of the supports, but we're going to put supports top and bottom. After we do this one, you can put in the rest, but I just put a reasonable amount of glue on here and kind of hold it from the sides and put some glue here to go up against the fuselage and some glue to go up against here. And I use epoxy for this because there was a really nice article done in the AMA magazine that tested all the different glues for doing work on foamies, and without a doubt the best glue for foamies was epoxy. I'm going to repeat that same thing with each of the four mount supports.